Hello everyone, my name is Charlotte Cooper. I'm going to be chairing this session, and the session is called This is What a Fat Activist Does. And we've got an hour together, and I've got my phone in my bra to keep an eye on the time, put it back there safely. We have a panel. They're going to introduce themselves shortly, and then I'll ask them some questions, and we're going to have a bit of a discussion between us, and then there'll be opportunities for you to ask questions too, and us to have a bigger discussion. And asking questions in front of everyone can be a bit intimidating, but just do your best. And if you have questions afterwards, we'll be milling around. You can approach us. We're fairly approachable people, apart from Kay. And also, if you want to contact us online, I don't know about the others, but I'm fairly findable. You can contact us later, weeks, months, years later, and ask us a question or have a conversation that way. And just one final thing before we really get going, I just want to thank, I always think it's like Women of Warcraft, but it's not, is it? It's Women of the World. I want to thank WOW, and also to thank Hannah Poole for inviting us to speak today. So I'm going to introduce the panel a little bit and sort of say how this came about. Headless fatties is a term that I coined a few years ago, and it describes how fat people's heads are cropped out of news media images. And once you see one of them, you just see them everywhere. And symbolically, I read this as a cultural understanding that fat people have absolutely nothing of value to say. We're typically rendered in the public eye as this dehumanised and abstract population called the obese. And it's very rare that we get to talk to each other and about our lives too. So I came up with the idea for this panel because those depictions are not our reality. And not only are we human, we also have agency and community and culture and many things to say about this. So this panel is an opportunity for us to speak. I wanted us to talk about the nuts and bolts of what we do as fat activists, and to think about what activism and fat activism means. I have a life as a researcher, and in my research over the years I've come across this thing that people think fat activism is one thing. It's a sort of a monolithic entity, and actually it's many things, and sometimes the things that people do for fat activism are quite ambiguous and contradictory, and fat activists don't always agree with one another either. So it's a very diverse endeavour that's influenced by changes over time and place, and influenced by people's identities as well. So in talking about this stuff, it's my secret wish that people get excited about it. I want to encourage more people to do fat activism, especially the weird stuff, which I love, and to customize it for themselves and to make this big, beautiful, expansive movement. So we're going to talk about some of the actual things that we actually do. And as we're talking, I'd like us to remember this kind of pernicious and pervasive silencing and dehumanizing, and acknowledge that it's a big deal that we're here speaking today. Some of us find public speaking incredibly stressful. And this isn't surprising because we live in cultures that don't want us to speak. And in fact, the video from last year's WOW panel has garnered over 100 hate comments on it. So remember that we speak because we understand that it's crucial to claim the power of our voices and to speak for ourselves in public. So perhaps keep in mind that speaking about fat in public is quite a tentative and scary thing for some of us. On that cheerful note, I'm going to introduce myself a bit more. So my name is Dr. Charlotte Cooper. I make most of my living as a psychotherapist, and I specialise in working with people that want to talk about fat stuff in various ways. I've been doing fat activism for about 25 years. I'm currently in the process of publishing my doctoral thesis about queer fat activism. I blog about a fat obesity time bomb. I come from punk, so part of my cultural work, I suppose, is making zines, which are small homemade publications, and I'm making films, and I perform with a band called Homosexual Death Drive, which is a queercore band. That's all I want to say about myself. Oh, actually, one thing. We were due to have another panelist here with us today called Rita Keegan, who is an artist who has been involved with fat activism for a very long time. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it and sends her apologies. And we miss you, Rita, but there'll be other times, I hope. That notwithstanding, it's time to meet the others. Perhaps, Kirsty, you'd like to start and introduce yourself and maybe say a little bit about what you think fat activism is as well.
Okay, so my name's Kirsty Fife. I think fat activism is part of my life in a lot of different ways. I run a fat positive fashion blog called Fatty Unbound, which I've been running since 2010. I make zines as well. The zines I make are Make It Work zine, which is about fat positive fashion and craft, and sort of more broader about resistance and occupying a fat body. And I make Hard Femme zine, which is about my relationship to queer femme identity, and there's a lot in there about class and bodies again. I was one of the people that started a group called the Yorkshire Rad Fat Collective, who do things like organised clothes swaps, and I've started organising fat positive clothes swaps in London now as well.
Nice one. Thank you, Kirsty. Who's up next, Kate or Kathryn? Kay, go on then.
Okay. My name's Kay Hyatt. I'm 41. I identify as fat and butch and a dyke, but I haven't always been fat, though I've probably always been a dyke. I've been, I guess, doing fat activist things or into fat activism kind of before I had a fat body myself, and became increasingly interested the fatter I got, and I just keep getting fatter. I'm not one of those good fatties who has a steady weight point. I get fatter every year and show no signs of stopping, and I'm not ashamed of that. I guess in terms of activism, I do stuff that's kind of I'm not really a campaigner. I don't try and change people's minds, though if I'm having one-to-one conversations with people, I'll call them out on their kind of fat hate. But I try and do stuff that's around kind of creating fat community, sort of left field kind of weird stuff. So things that I've done, I also put on a fat fashion jumble sale thing called the Big Bum Jumble in 2010. I co-created, co-organised the Fat Olympics in 2012. I've collaborated with the zines on sort of around fat stuff, and I ran for about a year, once a month kind of meet up for fat people, activists and allies, in a cafe in an attempt to build community and make a social space. So that's my main stuff.
Oh, thank you, Kate. Thanks. Kathryn.
Hello. I am awed by my fellow panellists. I'm just a troublemaker, basically. That's what I really am. I just make trouble as often as I possibly can. And I've become the kind of media voice for fat activism. There is such a thing, in that they drag me onto TV and radio to answer the obesity headlines that appear. For example, this week I did quite a lot on the sugar tax, the idea there's going to be a tax on sugar to fight the war against obesity. And I do my best to get a few points in which make perhaps another view that perhaps we all come in different shapes and sizes, and having a larger body is not something to be cured. My background is, I don't know, I'm just kind of ordinary, really. I'm just sort of thinking, what am I going to say, Because they are just so amazing. These guys are really out there, and they're much more cutting edge than I think. I'm basically a moderate by their standards. Anyway, I was into ballet as a kid, and I got thrown out of ballet for being fat. And from that point forward, because I could do it, I was very good actually at ballet, I decided I was going to put myself in positions repeatedly where I was perhaps not welcome. So it took a few years, but I became a fitness instructor. I'm YMCA qualified as a fitness instructor and also a gym instructor. So I taught classes for larger women, and I present in gyms all the time. This is a very radical thing for me. It's very radical to do, because it just puts me in a position. And again, doing TV work is the same thing. Putting myself in a position like on the breakfast TV couch, or on a radio show which is utterly, or with a presenter who is saying, well, you're shortening your life, or haven't you thought about your children, or all those different things that are thrown at fat people about, all the reasons why we shouldn't be fat. And I try and counter that as best I can by bringing in arguments that this is just part of being fat, is part of life. It's just part of who we are. It's part of our diversity, and it shouldn't be persecuted or hidden, or I guess period, people, what I find is that I think what motivates me is that I know that 90% of women get up in the morning, look in the mirror, and absolutely hate what they see. And that for me is a heartbreaking statistic, and that we then go on to function in our lives and make all those decisions that you have to make in a day based on that one factor, that we're somehow unacceptable, we must improve, we must change. And my feeling is that we are as we are, and we can participate, we can be there, and we can get involved in our lives no matter what size or shape we are, and irrespective of how we feel about our bodies. That's why I'm called a size acceptance campaign, and I want, or I hope, and I hope that I do this a lot, is try to accept that I am who I am, and that's enough. And that's where I come from. So.
Kathryn, I'd like to ask you a little bit about how you maintain your delightful, positive outlook in the face of doing this kind of media work where you're constantly under attack. I mean, how do you keep your strength up? I find that work really tough. How do you cope with it?
It's just bloody mindedness, really. I just don't believe it. Simply point blank, don't believe that because I have a larger body, I'm unacceptable. And that other women should believe because they have a little bit of extra weight, even if it's, if they're a size 14, they want to be a size 12, why that should be unacceptable, why it should impair our thinking, our lives, our attitude, and our choices. I did a thing with the Equalities Unit, the All-Party Equalities Unit, did a report on body image, and they were working with different reports. They sort of gathered these reports into one big thing. And it said that teens are really suffering, which we know, and the anorexia is on the rise, which we know, and how it impairs the decision-making process about the relationships that they have, the boyfriends, girlfriends that they choose, and the decisions as far as when they come to face things like drugs and alcohol. They make poor decisions. So that underpins the whole thing. If you feel bad about yourself, then you don't make good decisions. It's as simple as that. But if you're feeling great about yourself and you're saying, I'm brilliant, I'm here, and that's it, that's the best bit, then you can make a decision from a positive point of view. That really answers your question, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, that'll do. That's great. Thank you. Kate, I'm intrigued by you saying that campaigning isn't really part of your fat activism. Can you describe that a little bit more and maybe talk about perhaps the Fatty Olympics, what happened at this strange, indescribable event, which, full disclosure, we organised together?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess, when I think about campaigning, I'm thinking about the sort of things that Kathryn's talking about doing, about kind of like facing the enemy, as it were, and trying to kind of get that person to, to change their mind and whatever. And I don't know whether it's that stuff is not for me, or whether it's like, just it could be a cowardice. I don't know. I don't really want to put myself or my energy into that. What I prefer to think about doing is like, actually, what do I want as a fat person? What kind of fun do I want to have? What kind of people do I want to spend my time with? How do I want to feel like good about myself and good about, and help others to feel good about themselves? So in a very kind of local way amongst me and other fat people who might encounter me in my events, I try and do things that are more like that. So I guess that's what I mean about
immediacy and long-term work. There's quite a difference in those kinds of activisms, I imagine.
Yes, but I think, that doing something that shows like something that's about fat can be like brilliant and cool and like the funnest time you ever had. That influences people as well, because then they start to kind of open their mind to thinking about fat in different ways that are like different to kind of the the mainstream kind of message about obesity is bad, that in order to have a fully engaged life you have to lose weight first, or you have to become a different type of person in order to be able to do something like get on a stage, or mess around in the park, or like wear a skimpy outfit, or any of those things. Like I think like by creating things that show by example that like fat people can do this kind of stuff is a way of making the argument without like sitting down and making a dry argument, as it were. So did you ask me to describe
what happened at the Fatty Olympics?
The Fatty Olympics. Okay, so Charlotte and I, we both live within spitting distance of the Olympic Stadium in Stratford, and since kind of London got the bid, we had been wanting to do something in 2012, and living in that area, and just in general, there was so much kind of, I guess, rhetoric about how this place where you live is worthless now, but we're going to make it great, which annoyed us. And also the Olympics will solve the problem of obesity. We're going to inspire a generation of children to kind of get out and do exercise, and there won't be fat people anymore.
Yeah, that worked.
Yeah, and Newham is the fattest borough in London, where, there's plenty of fat people in Stratford. And also, like this idea of kind of, there's a particular kind of physicality or whatever that's celebrated and worthy of kind of getting a medal, and then there's everybody else. So the Fatty Olympics was kind of a response to that. So we made a deliberately accessible to all kind of space where we had non-competitive games and events, and everybody got a medal. We spent kind of several months beforehand making hundreds and hundreds of medals
out of wool,
out of bits of cardboard and string and any low quality craft medals, but everyone got a medal. Hundreds and hundreds of them were adorning my house before the day. And so, I don't know about the Fatty Olympics, whether it was activism, it was kind of like performance, it was like art. I mean, we collaborated with artists. Somebody made us some amazing torches. Someone else, Charlotte, wrote the lyrics, but someone we know who's a musician wrote an anthem, which we sang. The anthem was an incredible success. We sang it several times because people loved it so much.
You know what I'm going to say, don't you?
What?
You know what I'm going to say? Should we sing the anthem?
I could sing the anthem.
Should we sing the anthem?
Yeah.
Are you sure? Are you sure we should sing it?
Yeah.
Are you? What?
Sing.
Okay, she's sing it. When you're looking in the mirror and you don't like what you see, try to dream of social justice. Try to dream of being free. Trapped in the shadow of a corporate beast, you don't have to fuck people over to survive. You can try a different way. Maybe today we'll learn a new way to be alive. Let's try to dream it together. Let's dream it together today. It won't be perfect, 'cause things never are. But when times are hard, we'll remember messing around in the park. Doobie-doobie-doo. Join in. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 Okay. I'm totally appalled you now.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm describing it very well, but I guess the theme of the anthem is about, in the face of, and maybe the theme of my fat activism is, in the face of, this kind of monolith of power that you could barely chip away at, it's why not just, step to the side and create something beautiful for yourself in your own little corner, and from that, you and the people who were there, the people who get to hear about it, can just see, here is an alternative that, and probably it had absolutely no impact on Tam Fry from the Obesity Task Force in how he's going to push forward with measuring children in schools. It probably had no impact on that at all, but it made me feel good. It made the people who came feel good. Hopefully, the idea of it thrills you as well, and that's kind of it.
Thank you, Kay. Kirsty, very patient. Can you tell me a bit about your fashion blogging? Because from the way I see it, your work is actually very unique in the kind of the fatosphere, in that you bring a really critical eye to fashion. So could you say a bit more? You might have to define what we mean when we're talking fashion as well.
So fashion is broadly, I guess, a culture around plus size fashion, clothing. It's sometimes connected to plus size brands, but it's sometimes and what I try to do is much more rooted in DIY culture, in craft, in thrifting, in sort of scavenging clothes. I think I've always been into clothes since I was a kid, and me and my dad used to like go around charity shops a lot, and it was sort of a really important space for me when I was growing up in terms of forming my own identity, in terms of exploring queerness, in terms of exploring who I was and sort of forming my own identity. So I've always seen fashion as quite a playful space for exploration. I got involved in sort of broadly the fatosphere and I guess fat activism as a whole through finding online fashion communities in about 2007-ish.
Wow, so that's a long time ago.
Yeah, so there used to be a community called Fashionista that was on LiveJournal, and it just used to be a space, and this was, I think, before a lot of people had blogs as well. It was a community where people would post outfits, but also talk really critically about what it meant to be plus size. It was a space where people got a lot of support and could share experiences. So it was about clothes, but it was about a lot more, and sort of what it covered reached a lot further than that.
I like the way that what you do sort of addresses consumerism,
Yeah.
and also about making and doing as well,
Yeah.
as well as just, I mean, quite a lot of fashion is about buying.
Yeah.
But your take is quite critical on
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I think because the way I grew up was like never being able to afford to buy things. So sort of that experience of almost having to make something out of nothing that comes from being like a poor kid wanting to play with clothes like people who have money can play with clothes. So so that's, I guess, always been part of my engagement with fashion. And yeah, I'm really interested in sort of forging spaces that use clothes in a playful and activist way that aren't also deeply connected to here's the latest season from X, Y, or Z, buy, and which are critical of the way that clothing companies use, and especially now plus size blogging is quite a mainstream thing, as well as an alternative community, that people will use bloggers and brands, and there's a grey area there between sort of capitalism and participation from bloggers that I'm not comfortable with.
Yeah, it's a funny kind of activism.
Yeah.
By the way, you're looking amazing today. Could you talk us through your outfit?
Thank you. So this is from a swap I organised. These are cheap as crap hoops from Primark. This is probably mega sale from somewhere similar, and this is from Forever 21. So I like, it maybe costs about 15 quid or something like that.
See what I mean? Beautiful. Kathryn, I was very interested in you saying that you've been involved with fat activism for 20 years, and I wonder what kind of changes have you seen in fat activism over this period, or what kind of
Within fat activism?
Yeah, like what was it like 20 years ago?
I was mostly involved in the American side of it at that point.
Yeah.
And in America, if you know, there's a much more early movement about fat activism. There was women writing in the 70s and I think late 60s as well. Big publications came out in the 70s.
Yeah.
And so I was more involved with them because that's all I could find. There wasn't anything I could find in the UK. There weren't many people actually doing anything about it. And the idea of me standing up and saying I'm a fat fitness instructor or a fat ballerina or whatever fat thing I wanted to say was very radical in the UK. So I found sisters and people I could relate to over in America. So I went there a few times and visited and talked to them. But that's how it was back then. I began to realise that what I was doing really was just being present. I wasn't really engaging in the way you've engaged in creating events or anything like that. I haven't really done that. I've basically just been present and just refused to be excluded. I think that's been my thing. But to be honest with you, I think every fat woman is an activist. I mean, that's my feeling on it. I mean, all you've got to do is get on public transport and suddenly you're an activist, or you just got to leave your house and enter this sort of hostile environment, excuse me. And when you go in this sort of hostile sea of faces that will stare at you and look at you and sort of, oh my God, she's huge. or you know, there's muttered stuff that happens behind us. As we know, there's a whole I've forgotten the artist's name, who is taking photographs of people behind her who are saying bad things about her. She goes out dressed usually in shorts. I think she's an American again. I've totally forgotten her name. And she takes pictures of people's reactions of her towards her. And often it's pretty horrible, isn't it? People are sort of going, oh, and things like this behind. And so I was aware of all that happening around me. So I think that happens to every large woman. Take a seat on public transport and suddenly you're Rosa Parks. You're actually arriving and doing something that is really radical because you're not taking out more than for your allotted 15, 16 inches on a piece of public transport. You know, it's huge. It's like, or somebody will sit down next to you and start sort of trying to boot you over a bit, imagining that somehow you can suddenly become smaller, so you can allow them slightly larger. So these all kinds. I think every fat woman does that. I don't think what I do is particularly unusual. I think because I talk too much, as you probably worked out, that I get asked on TV. I think every big woman out there is an activist for me, unless they choose not to enter the public arena, and then my heart starts to break.
Yes, I think that entering the public arena is a crucial step, actually, and extremely difficult. Yeah. Okay, this public arena thing, I want you to talk a bit about the weigh-in, because this is a very small way of creating a public discussion around fat. Can you tell us about what the weigh-in is and what you did?
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think, again, it's about, like, this kind of DIY sensibility of, like, if something doesn't exist, you know, that you want, that you'd like to see, then, you know, try and create it for yourself, rather than waiting around for other people to do it. So, I think I was looking for, like, a way to meet other fat people who might want to engage critically in stuff around fat, and so I, like, decided that I would start, like, a monthly kind of meet-up group. So it's on hiatus at the moment, so I'll tell you about why in a minute, but so a monthly kind of meet up we used a vegan cafe, again, an accessible space, which is always important to me. I thought it would be kind of fun to have it in somewhere vegan, because there's quite a lot of kind of interesting tension between, like, kind of healthist, kind of radical vegans and fat people that I thought might be kind of fun to play with. They didn't want to have us initially, and then they were, like, really apologetic and wanted to have us, but basically I just kind of, like, made a date, third Thursday of every month, and went and held that space, and a couple of times nobody came but me, but other times there were, like, you know, up to, like, 10 people turned up, and we did various things. Sometimes it was just like we're just hanging out and chatting with each other about our lives, and also it was kind of like a jumping off point for organising other things. So we organised a swim, archway pool. We went into, like, a leisure pool with slides and waves and stuff, and went to a public session, and, you know, just turned up and fatted it up, which we called Creatures from the Fat Lagoon, which was fun, and, you know, sometimes we'd have, like, a particular topic. Kirsty came and did a little workshop for us on clothes alteration, which was really great. Charlotte told us about her research, that kind of thing. So but I stopped doing it because I, like, have a full-time job, and I sort of ran out of energy for it, really. I mean, so it's kind of on hold. If I had more time and I was more skilled, I'd probably try and kind of keep it going online and maybe revive it again, try and build some interest in it. But it was hard. I think my fantasy when I started it was, like, I'll create this space, people will come and people will use it and start to, like, make their own stuff. But essentially what happened, it was like, if I didn't make something myself or organise something myself, it didn't happen. So so I'm a bit burnt out on the way in at the moment, but, you know, it may come back. But yeah, I think mostly it came from a desire from myself to like, you know, done, like, massive things like organising the Fatty Olympics, which I did with Charlotte, and it's like, as soon as you finish this enormous thing that took, like, 5 years to plan and, like, 6 months of intensive hard work, and I raised all the money for it myself, as soon as it's over, everybody who came said that was great. When are you doing another? And you know, so I was.
And then get quite upset when you
when
go.
you say,
You must
"Never."
be joking.
yeah. So you know, my hope was with the weigh-in that like we would build a little community of people who would be interested in doing stuff, so that I don't always have to make it myself, and that I could just turn up as a guest to something. But which is good, which does happen, because I went to Kirsty's amazing clothes shop clothes swap a couple of weeks ago. So
we can come to the clothes swap in a minute, and I also remember there's the Big Bum Jumble to talk about perhaps.
Okay.
But yeah, did you find that burnout was an issue with the Yorkshire Rad Fat Collective, which, by the way, I love the name, and I think it's part of a tradition of like the Fat Underground or the New Haven Fat Liberation Front. I love these revolutionary names for fat activism. Did you find that burnout has been an issue in organising things?
It has been, but I think with that, perhaps if I give a little background.
Yeah,
to
please
it.
do.
So it started off with just a friend of mine, a friend of me, who decided that we wanted to have one clothes swap, and then we hosted that, and we invited our friends, and some other people came, and we continued to host them, and sort of just gradually over time people started, I think, engaging with it as a social space as well. So we decided to, from the sort of energy that we had after those events, create a group to do with the idea that it wouldn't, and part of that was burnout, because it was sort of, we were in a sort of similar but much more low-key way sort of organising these things that people were coming to and going, this space is amazing, it's fantastic, and then leaving and immediately being like, so when's the next one, when are you doing something else? And one of the reasons we set up the collective was so that multiple people could feed in and pick up, and for instance, I mean, I live in London now, but and the other person I started doing stuff with is unable to organise as well, so we were able to go in the group, we can't do this anymore because one of us is at the other end of the country and the other one has other reasons to not be able to do stuff. So if you want this space to continue, you're going to have to, a few of you are going to have to get together and pick it up. And actually people did, and it's still going on.
Miracle of miracles.
But again, it's I do think it's, you know, there's a Facebook group for it, and there's 120 people in the Facebook group, but the people who maybe have had an organising influence are a much smaller pool of people. So
why do you think that is, that people don't step up?
I think part of it is not having confidence in organising. I know before I organised something, and in fact I needed to meet a friend who had a more sort of just do it, even if no one turns up, it's fine sort of attitude about things. But before I'd organised with someone else, I thought activism was something that you had to be sort of a proper person to do, and so it was hard for me to start in that sense. So I think maybe that's it, and it's been good with that group because we use it as a sort of space where people can propose things and other people can go, I'd like that to happen, I'll do it this way. But I think also part of that is Yorkshire, where there's a lot of really low cost places to hire. It's kind of easier to put something together on a much more local level.
Yes.
Because London's so commodified, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, what advice would you have? I mean, first of all, what things do people propose? What's the kind of, what does it look like?
So things that have been done have mainly been the clothes swaps. We organised quite a lot of swimming trips, which is quite similar. We went to Doncaster Dome, which is the sort of...
Oh, I'd love to go there.
It's kind of... I'm sure it was very snazzy when it was built, but it's all sort of a faux tropical swimming pool. And it's also got these little rapids that I think we caused a little bit of a pile-up in at one point, which was quite fun. So we've done a few of those. We've had sort of, just social gatherings and where, we just hang out together. And someone in the group at the minute, I think it's due to happen at the end of the month, is organising a fat queer prom that's going on in Wakefield.
Oh my lord.
So that's something which is happening, is something which is feeding into sort of a bigger something.
Yeah, cool. Kay, you went to the fat clothes swap that Kirsty organised.
I did.
And also, maybe this is the opportunity to talk about the jumble a bit, but what was it that you enjoyed about these spaces? What is it that's special about them?
Well, I mean, the first such space I went to was in 2007. I went to the Fat Girl Flea in New York, which is run as a fundraiser for No Lose, which is a fat queer conference that happens in the States on just around an annual basis. They don't have it every year, but they try. And one of the things that inspired me to do my own when I did the Big Bum Jumble in 2010, and I found a very sort of similar atmosphere in Kirsty's clothes swap the other day. It's a space where where people there's just so much joy in those spaces. So people are trying clothes on, but where they don't fit them, they're or whatever, they're picking out and styling other people, and people are parading up and down in their amazing new finds and stuff. I mean, at the Fat Girl Flea in 2007, we found a homemade peephole bra in one of the piles, which was just blew my mind. I wish we'd bought it.
I wish
actually.
I'd got that, yeah.
Because it's just incredible. And that's your thing about, sort of using what you've got and making stuff. And, I'm not I don't know, I'm not, possibly I'd be more into fashion if there was more fashion choices available for me, but I like to dress in a masculine style, but I'm quite restricted because men's clothes aren't made for a fat woman's body, and I'm kind of short as well. But I guess being in these spaces where people are kind of making it work, I guess, and sharing the resources that they have, it's really lovely and inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kathryn, I'm going to throw it open to the floor briefly in a minute, but I'd like you to talk about your Facebook thing.
My Facebook thing. I'm absolutely crap at social media. I really don't get it. So I did a course at City Business, hoping that I'd grasp it. I think I've grasped Facebook to a certain point, so I'm just trying to put up some of my media stuff. But what I'm also doing is the biggest question that's asked me is, as a size acceptance campaigner, how do you accept your size? How do you actually get in front of the mirror and say, yeah, I'm great, I'm cool, I'm fine? Not that I've got that nailed, but I definitely had been through a sort of process with myself of challenging some of the negative voices inside and also outside that I've experienced in my life, and overcoming that and saying, well, no, actually that was crap, I don't believe that, I'm going to believe this. So choosing to believe, choosing to embody a different kind of reality to absolutely everything around me and most of my life and the people that have been in my life up until now, including my family. So I've created something called Divine. Well, I've made my badge downstairs. Divine Fat, which I've now put on my Facebook page. So it's a very new Facebook page. We won't have very new followers or likes yet, or we're hoping we'll.
There will be after today.
We'll like each other. But it's a 10-day program. It's basically just talking about how to let go of some of these negative perceptions, how to step into being the divine fat goddess that you really are. That's my identification. You might not be a fat goddess, but I definitely am a fat goddess. And we all are we not? Yes, we're definitely fat
I'm an
goddess.
atheist.
I know this is the pagan goddess.
Fat
It's not nothing to do
godless.
with religion, let me tell you. But it's just challenging some of those perceptions, like when you were told when you were little that you were somehow unacceptable or bullied at school. It's challenging bullying, challenging external and internal, because we do that ourselves. I mean, this is the tragedy of this situation, is that we do it ourselves. We don't need anybody outside, because we've got this negative dialogue going on all the time about how we should be thinner, we should be this, or we should be, if we dyed our hair it might be better, or all those different things that and everything around us reinforces that. And so this is a kind of a little thing, and it's it's just a trial. It's not like a major project that I've worked on for thousands of years. It's just my life journey to this point in a 10-day program, with the idea that you could just suspend the reality that you were sunk into at the moment, and just say, well, I'm going to put that aside, and I'm just going to, for these 10 days, try and get rid of this negativity and try to love my body and to love myself and to be divinely fat, if if you want that.
Beautiful, thank you. I just want to say it's been a real privilege to be part of this discussion today, and where sort of discussions around fat usually sort of boil down to kind of finger wagging and calories and exercise. I hope that we've shown that there's that fat activism can bring a very kind of rich dimension to the discussion of what fat can be about. I'm really intrigued that nobody ever thinks of themselves as an activist as well. It's quite a difficult identity to adopt, but I also agree with the things the panelists have said about everyday actions and conversations and very small things can be construed as activism. And I hope that we continue to speak. And in fact, having said that, there is going to be another panel on the 31st of March, which I'm organising, which is about fat and performance. And you can find out about that, let's see, by following me on Twitter. My Twitter name is The Beefer, and I can tell you all about it there. But that's kind of pretty much all we have time for today. I'm sorry there wasn't time for more questions. I greedily wanted the panellists to share their thoughts. But we will be milling around afterwards, and you can corner us. And again, thank you very much for listening, being delightful people, and for listening to us sing. And going to wrap it up then. Yeah, all right. Cheers.
Thanks to Charlotte for chairing so expertly as well.